Omeshnee Naidoo is my guest today on Future Cities Africa. She's Director of Information Systems and Technology at the City of Cape Town. Omeshnee, welcome. For those who don't know you, take us on a quick tour of your background and your current role at the City of Cape Town.
Sure, no problem. Happy to do that. So I have been in the tech and digital industry for just about 20 years now. I come from a deep consulting background, having done local and global digital programs, really across industries. But over the last kind of 5 to 6 years, I've moved into corporate, taking on CIO roles, both on the local side in terms of the FMCG industry. And then now recently, over the last 3 years, I have been the CIO at the City of Cape Town, which is my present position.
Can you elaborate on some key digital projects that's currently happening at the City of Cape Town or in the pipeline for the City of Cape Town?
Sure, no problem. Happy to do that. So over the last 3 years that I've been at the city, there's been a fair amount of almost resilience-based projects that the city has had to embark on due to the shocks and stresses that have come into the city itself. With the recent drought that has happened, there have been digital programs that have been put through to try to assist with the drought and where the drought is going. And there's been a fair amount that has been done in that space. With that said, I think the city has always been fairly digitally mature and has been growing from an industry point of view in terms of typical city types of initiatives. So looking at issues in terms of transportation, from a sustainable transportation point of view, urban planning management as to how we improve from a digital tech point of view. And now we are busy embarking on what we're calling a digital modernization program as the city, where we are looking to undertake quite a major program around how we look at our current systems in the environment and modernize them into newer age technologies to ensure that as a city, we continue to be digitally progressive.
What kind of trends and opportunities do you see emerging out of this COVID-19 pandemic, especially for the City of Cape Town and perhaps for South Africa as a whole?
Interesting question. I think, globally, the trend has obviously been remote working. And so I think if anything that has come out of this COVID-19 pandemic from a digital point of view, it has most definitely been around enablement of workforces to work from home. And so I foresee that going into the future, the government industry, the city, just like all of the rest of the industries out there, will really look to explore what it means for remote working into the future. It's been very interesting coming from a space where I think that we have been very used to seeing each other face to face. And I think there's almost been a forced change in terms of virtual connections. But I think in a lot of ways, people have been pleasantly surprised that this can work. And so I think we will start to see that from a COVID-19 pandemic output perspective, there will be definitely thought processes around whether remote working can create efficiencies for organizations, and therefore whether it is something that in some hybrid type of approach will become the future.
Absolutely. And where do you see technology playing a role in improving service delivery and saving money for citizens, again in Cape Town and South Africa as a whole?
I think that in terms of technology, I always say this in terms of, at the end of the day, if technology can bring business value to the problems that we have as a city, or whether that's any industry, then we can be assured that the technology change will be quite useful. From a city point of view, I think it's dependent on the maturity of a particular city and where they are in terms of their digital landscape. From a City of Cape Town point of view, I do believe that, we'll start to see a future in terms of IoT and where the Internet of Things will take us into the future from a digital kind of progression point of view. I also think that we have a lot of great data that we have accumulated over the years with a very solid foundational ERP system that we've had in place. And so I foresee that into the future, we will start to think about how we use that data and grow on that data from an analytics point of view to get better and more effective at decision making. So I think those are probably the areas in terms of IoT, artificial intelligence, that as the city that we'll see growth and space in.
And currently, how important is real-time delivery of services for the city of Cape Town?
So it's been interesting. I mean, especially with COVID, e-services and the fact that we've had e-services for a long time has actually been quite useful to us. We've seen an increase in terms of e-services and online payments over the COVID pandemic. And I don't doubt that that will continue to be a trend into the future. Because once people go online, they tend to see the convenience of that. And so they tend to then stick to online purchases in a lot of ways. So I foresee that, online payments and e-services and mobile payments is definitely something that will continue to be a trend and a growing trend across industries.
Do you foresee a long-term revenue decline due to COVID-19? Has this stopped you from investing, or are you investing more in technology?
Good question. Happy to answer it. So from my perspective, so what we are busy with as the city is looking at, so we have a recovery work stream as part of the COVID pandemic that we are looking at. We are looking at multiple scenarios into the future where, that could either be revenue decline. I think it's hard to say at this point in time as to what that potentially could look like. I think we all know that, the potential of an economic downturn is at hand. And so with that, of course, we do need to look at what that means from a revenue perspective. And that there could very much be that possibility of a decline from a revenue point of view. In terms of tech investment, though, I think it's been interesting that, and I think it's probably, whilst companies are not necessarily wanting to just invest in tech, I think they are seeing tech as an opportunity to actually streamline their business. And so I think tech investments are happening in spaces for reasons of cost optimization, as well as in spaces where there's a need for innovation. Because I think a lot of industries and companies, and probably cities as well, need to start thinking about opportunities from a revenue generation perspective outside of just the norm of what we've been used to.
So municipalities all appear to follow their own technology directions. Is there not a case for more collaboration between municipalities?
Yes, I do think that municipalities absolutely, could benefit from collaboration. I think that you see that the big metros typically invest, and actually their digital tech investments are very similar from that perspective. And so collaboration is definitely the opportunities. And then I think smaller district municipalities actually could benefit from metros that have highly digitized environments. And so I think there does exist great shared services opportunities from a collaboration point of view. So definitely, government must work together and see our assets as a whole, as opposed to just bits and pieces and living in silos.
On the topic of collaboration, how do we get to better public and private sector collaboration? I do know that the private sector wants things done now. The public sector has other things to worry about. What's your views on that?
So I think that, public-private sector partnerships are important. I think they're going to become probably more and more important with time. I think it always works when both parties understand and agree that there's benefit and value on both ends of the deal. And I think that from a government point of view, yes, there's great opportunities for public-private partnership. Obviously, yes, there's a lot of legislation that one needs to work through to ensure that it's always fair and equitable. And I know sometimes with private partnerships, that does get a bit frustrating because that's considered a lot of red tape and bureaucracy. But with that said, I think that, I always say to private partners that want to partner with government to say that if you're willing to stick with it for the long haul, then let's talk about this, because it is definitely, when you want to work with government, something that you need to want to do and see it as a longer term partnership. But I think that when you're just looking for quick wins, I won't lie, I think government, I wouldn't say is unnecessarily slow, but when you are looking after citizen money, I think there's a need for governance and compliance that we all know should be there. And so, I think it really is about partnering and understanding each other, and expectations behind that can create positive private-public partnerships. And I think we've seen a lot of those out there already.
So in your view, what is the one single biggest challenge that the city of Cape Town must overcome to secure a very bright future for itself and its citizens?
So I think at the city, the one thing that we always look to do is to be resilient. And I think that that is something that the city needs to continue doing. So I think that, there are a number of factors and shocks and stresses that keeps hitting a city. And I think if we are able to understand what those shocks and stresses could be, and we understand clearly from a scenario-based perspective of how to react to that, that will make us a city that will be able to be sustainable and progressive into the future. So I think resilience is key.
And finally, let's jump into a time machine and go 20 years from today. What does the city of Cape Town look like in terms of technologies? What does that normal look like in 20 years' time?
So in 20 years' time, I think that we would have embraced probably a very new set of technologies. I know we talk about cloud being the future. I am on a cloud competitive kind of route of where I do believe we will have kind of the best of breed technologies coming into the future, as opposed to the monolithic type of ERP system that we have now, that has done us well up until now. But I think that, the natural kind of transition from that into now being mature enough to move into a breed of the best systems that are out there will be what we will see in 20 years' time. I also think that, we'll start to see quite a change in terms of just having more data with the different types of programs that we will run, and that allowing us, therefore, to make more effective decisions as an organization that is more data-led, as opposed to led by assumptions at this point in time, or in certain spaces and areas of the organization.
Excellent. So when I was a kid, I thought in 2020 we're flying cars, and now we're not even allowed to get in our car.
I know,
So
there we
these future
go.
predictions,
Well, I guess the question is, within 20 years, we'll be flying cars. Who knows?